At 4:20 on a Friday in November, I carried a cardboard box into my parents' kitchen in Duluth and asked for 60 days. Not money. I want that on the record right at the front because of what happens later. 60 days, a room, and somewhere dry to put a sewing machine. My mother did not stand up. She reached over to the pile of mail on the counter and pulled out a piece of paper she had apparently been keeping there, and I have thought about that a great deal since, about the fact that it was already on the counter, and she slid it across the table. A canceled check. $11,000. Dated 4 years earlier. That, she said, is what your first idea cost this family. I had paid it back. All of it, plus 4% in 14 months. And I had the letter my father wrote me when I finished, which said, "Proud of you, kid," in his handwriting. She tapped the check twice with one finger, like it was evidence. My father did not look up from his coffee. He said 7 words. "Don't bring your problems into this house." And then my brother came and stood in the doorway of the room they had just told me was unavailable, and I could see past him. I could see straight past his shoulder into that room. There were about 40 boxes in it, stacked to the window, and every single one had a shipping label on the side that said Dahlberg Marine, receiving. Colts boxes. He smiled at me and said, "Hey, this is probably good for you, actually. I want to give you a date, March 14th. Nothing happened to me on March 14th. I need you to understand that. It was a Tuesday. It was 19 degrees, and I spent it in a garage gluing a chair rail on a walnut settee for a woman in Hermantown whose mother had died in it. Nothing happened to me at all. 4 blocks away, at the county building on First Street, something was being recorded, and I would not find out about it for 411 days. Before I tell you what was recorded that day, and what the woman who saved my life kept from me for 8 months, tell me what time it is where you are, and what town you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels. I'm an upholsterer. I want to be precise about that, because people hear it and picture a hobby. It is a trade. There is a 2-year apprenticeship if you do it right, and I did it right, in Minneapolis, under a man named Irv who is dead now, and who took the good scissors away from me for 11 days in my first month for cutting toward myself. Here's the job. Somebody brings you a chair. Almost nobody brings you a chair because it's broken. They bring you a chair because their mother sat in it for 40 years and the arms are gone through. And they cannot afford to have it done, and they cannot stand to put it on the curb. You take it apart. And when you take an old chair apart, you find everything. Horsehair. A 1961 newspaper somebody stuffed in the deck. Coins. A rosary once. You find how it was built and where it was mended before, badly, by somebody's husband in 1979 with the wrong kind of tack. And then you put it back so it will go another 40 years. That's what I do. I work on things other people already decided weren't worth keeping. My shop was on Superior Street. 4 years. It was small, and it was mine, and it was surviving. And then in the spring of that year, a man named Rennie Boyce got a contract to redo the supper club out at the lake. 41 booths, all the bar stools, and the banquette in the back room. It was the biggest job of my life by a factor of 6. And I did not take a deposit. I want to say that as plainly as I can. That was my decision. Nobody made me. I did not take a deposit because Rennie Boyce had gone to school with my father. And my father called me on a Wednesday and said, "Ren, don't insult the man. I've known Rennie 35 years. He's good for it." So I fronted the materials. $11,000 of foam, webbing, springs, and about 900 yards of a vinyl that had to be special ordered from a mill in North Carolina because that's what the designer specified. I did the work. All of it. 91 days. Rennie Boyce paid me 40% and then stopped answering. And 4 months later, the supper club changed hands, and Rennie Boyce's company filed, and I was one of 11 unsecured creditors. And I got a letter about it eventually that I never opened. I closed my shop on a Thursday. I owed my landlord $6,400 under a settlement. And on the Friday I went to my parents' house with a box. And my father, who had told me not to insult the man, said 7 words about my problems. I sat in my car in their driveway for a while. I want to be honest, I did not have a plan. I had a box and about $200, and I was doing the thing where you sit in a car and stare at a bag of something. Somebody knocked on my window. Sigrid Voss is 47. Everybody has called her Sig since about 1994. And here's the thing you need to know. She is not my aunt. She was married to my father's brother Dale for 19 years, and they divorced 6 years before any of this, and it was not friendly. And my family stopped inviting her to things about 11 minutes after the papers went through. She had not been in my parents' house in 6 years. She had come by that night to drop off a table saw that had been Dale's father's because my mother had finally asked for it back. That's it. That is the entire reason she was in that driveway. Coincidence. I'm not going to dress it up as fate. She had a brass key in her hand. She said, "Ren, my garage is empty. It's 12 feet and it's not heated, and there's a lawnmower in it that hasn't run since Clinton." I said something about not being able to take that from her, and Sig Voss said, "I didn't offer you a favor. I offered you a garage. Those are different, and you'll figure out how in about a week." She had one car, a Buick, 17 years old, with a driver's window that would not go up all the way. The garage was where that car lived. She gave me the garage in November, in Duluth, which meant that car sat at the curb from November to April with a contractor bag taped over the driver's window. And Sig Voss worked nights doing billing at St. Mary's and came home at 6:40 in the morning with snow in the driver's seat. I said something about it the second week, and she said, "Stop turning gratitude into paralysis. Use the help. Earn the next thing." And then, because she is who she is, she handed me a legal pad and a marker and said, "Every dollar in and every dollar out, written down before you sleep. Not on a computer, on this, where I can see it." I asked why not on a computer. And she said, "Because I don't know how to read a computer at 4 in the morning when I can't sleep." That is the only time in 10 years she has ever told me she doesn't sleep. Here's what was actually against me, and I'm going to give you the real numbers, because the real numbers are the story. My commercial insurance and my state sales tax permit both lapsed 90 days from the day I closed. If I let them go, restarting meant new fees, a new inspection queue, and best case, 4 months closed. I owed my old landlord $6,400, due at the end of that same 90 days. I had $211 and a sewing machine in a garage. 90 days. I did not have a plan. I had one idea, which was, do the thing nobody else in this town will do. Every furniture place in Duluth will sell you a new chair. Almost nobody will take apart a 1948 wing chair for a woman who cannot pay $400 for it. So I posted 3 photographs from that garage under Sig's work light, and I wrote, "Bring me the one you can't throw away." First call came in 11 hours. A man named Petrie, 79, whose wife had died in March. A green rocker. He said on the phone, "I don't want it to look new. I want it to look like it did." That is the whole job in one sentence, and a 79-year-old man gave it to me for free. He paid me $190. I did it in 4 days. He cried in the driveway, which I was not prepared for, and which I have since gotten used to in a way I am not sure is healthy. Then his daughter called. Then her friend from church. Then a woman who ran an assisted living place on Woodland who had 11 dining chairs that had been condemned by a corporate purchasing decision she thought was stupid. 11 chairs. $2,200. By day 60, I had cleared the insurance and the permit. By day 88, I paid the landlord. By day 90, I had $14. Because Sig made me put 10% into an envelope she kept in her kitchen and would not let me touch. We ate a grocery store pizza off 2 upturned buckets, and she raised a can of pop and said, "All right, now you're allowed to start." What neither of us knew, what I would not know for another year and a half, was that by then, it had already been happening for 6 weeks. I'm going to tell you now, because you should know it while you watch the rest. And because I did not know it, and I want you to feel what that's like from the other side. On March 14th at 11:06 in the morning, a warranty deed was recorded at the county recorder's office on 1st Street. The property was 3218 and 3220 Rester Mill, a side-by-side duplex in West Duluth. Seag rented the west unit. She had rented it for 9 years. The garage was on the west side. The seller was an estate. The buyer was an entity called Rester Mill Holdings, formed 6 weeks earlier. The registered agent was a commercial broker on Superior Street, my father. The sole member was my brother. I was 4 blocks away that morning, I have checked. I have the invoice. I billed a woman in Hermantown for 11 hours that week on a walnut settee her mother died in. Colt bought the building my garage was attached to 6 weeks after our mother slid a canceled check across a table at me. He did not tell Seag. There was no reason to. The rent kept going to the same property management company, which he also now paid, and the check kept clearing, and nothing about her life changed by 1 degree. He did not tell me, obviously. And here is the part I need you to hold on to for the next 15 minutes. He didn't do anything with it. Not for a year. He just owned it. He sat on it. He came to Thanksgiving. He asked me how business was going, and I told him, and he said, "That's great, Ren, seriously." He was not waiting for me to fail. That's what I thought at first, later, when I found out. It took me another 2 years to understand that he was waiting for me to succeed. Year 1 into year 2, I moved out of the garage for actual production. You cannot spray finish in a residential garage, and I was not going to be the kind of person who did. So I rented 1,100 square feet in a light industrial building on Garfield. The garage stayed. That's where the ledger was. And that's where I did handwork at night. And that's where the good scissors hung on their fishing line off the bench. I hired one person in year 2, Dree, 24, from Cloquet, and she had hands. I want to describe Dree properly because she matters at the end. She ate the same gas station burrito every single day for 2 years and would not be talked out of it. She could not do math in her head at all, and she could feel a bad weld in a chair frame through the fabric. She called me boss ironically for about 6 months and then just started calling me boss. Year 2, my foam supplier moved me to cash on delivery with no explanation. Their rep said the phrase, "reviewing our regional accounts," which meant nothing. Year 3, a listing I'd had on a local business directory for 2 years came down. The directory was run out of an office on Superior Street. I called about it twice and got voicemail. Year 3, a designer I'd worked with 4 times told me, awkwardly, at a chamber thing, that she'd heard I'd had trouble finishing a big job once. I did not connect any of it, I want to be honest. I did not connect any of it. I thought I was just a woman with a failed shop in a small town, paying for it slowly the way you do. And every one of those was true. That's what made it work. February of year 3. This is the part I have never told anybody outside of 4 people. I was doing a set of 6 chairs on deadline for a restaurant that was reopening, and I had a funeral chair. You get funeral chairs. Somebody dies, the family wants the chair done for the service, and there is no moving the date. That woman was being buried on a Saturday, and her daughter wanted the wing chair in the front room for the visitation. So I was doing 70 hours at Garfield and then coming to the garage at 10 at night to hand tie the springs on the wing chair because there was nowhere else to do it. There was a kerosene heater in that garage. It was Dale's. It was probably from 1988. And on the night of the 11th, I had that heater about 4 feet from a stack of open cell foam and a can of contact cement with the lid resting on it, not screwed down, because I had been going back and forth to it for 2 hours. I fell asleep in the chair I was working on. That's the truth. I was 34 years old, and I fell asleep sitting in a half-upholstered wing chair at 1 in the morning with a kerosene heater running. What woke me was Seag. She was standing in the door in a coat over her scrubs, and she had come home early, and she was screaming at me, actually screaming, which in 10 years I have heard twice. And the foam nearest the heater had gone brown and started to curl, and there was a smell in there I still get sometimes in the winter. It did not catch. It was maybe 90 seconds from catching. She dragged the heater out into the snow by the handle with her bare hand and burned 2 fingers doing it and would not let me look at them. And then she stood in that driveway at 19 degrees and said one thing. "I sleep 30 feet from that wall, Ren." I said I was sorry about 9 times. She said, "I don't want sorry. I want you to hear the sentence." And she said it again. "I sleep 30 feet from that wall." Then she went inside. I finished the wing chair on the Friday, and it was at that woman's visitation on the Saturday. I have never once been proud of that. Year 4. 3 shops was still a long way off. I had the Garfield space and 11 employees, and I was doing about $600,000 a year, which sounds like something and is not once you have run payroll for 11 people, but it looked like something. There was a piece in the paper. A restoration I did on the seating in an old theater got photographed. And on a Saturday in October, my parents came to the Garfield shop for the first time in 4 years with Colt. And my mother brought grocery store flowers still in the plastic. They performed Pride for about 6 minutes. It was actually convincing. My father put his hand on a chair back and said, "Look at this," twice. Then Colt put a folder on my desk. Dahlberg Marine had gone from 1 boat storage and detailing operation to 4 in 4 years across 2 counties. The proposal wanted 3 things. 1. I would move my production into 30,000 square feet Colt had at the Rice Lake facility at what he called family rate. 2. I would put my restoration work under the Dahlberg name as a division. 3. I would put in $240,000. The document described my business, in writing, as a family-supported specialty workshop. Family-supported. Sig Voss taped a garbage bag over a car window for 5 months and worked nights at St. Mary's. And the word for that, in my brother's folder, was family-supported. I said no. I did not shout. I said the business did not have $240,000, and that I had 11 people whose paychecks depended on me not having exposure I couldn't see, and that I would not put my work under a name belonging to a man who had stood in a doorway in front of 40 of his own boxes and told me it was probably good for me. My father said, "Well, sure." He always says that first, before he disagrees. Then he said, "But you might think about who's going to remember this in this town." And my mother put her hand over mine and said, so gently that it took a full second to land, "Don't forget who gave you the chance to be here in the first place." As if my whole life were a loan with a rate on it. Colt picked up his folder, and at the door he said, "Businesses like this go away all the time, Ren." And I thought he was being a jerk. He was giving me 30 days' notice, and I did not have the information to hear it. 11 days later, Sig got a letter. Not from a person, from a property management company. Notice of a rent increase effective in 60 days. From $940 a month to $1,450. 54%. Sig makes $41,000 a year doing hospital billing. She brought it into the garage on a Tuesday night and put it on the bench next to the scissors and said, "I have to ask you something, and I need you to not be nice about the answer. Can you cover $400 a month for a while?" And I said yes before she finished the sentence. And then I said, "Who's the landlord? It's been that same company for 9 years." And she said she didn't know. It was just the company. I went to the recorder's office on First Street on a Thursday morning because I have a bad habit, which is that when something doesn't sit right, I go look at the paper. Irv taught me that. About chairs. If it doesn't sit right, take it apart and look. The woman pulled up 3218 and 3220 Restormel. Restormel Holdings. Recorded March 14th of year 1. I asked her how to find out who that was, and she told me the Secretary of State site was free and I could look at it on my phone standing right there. So I did. Standing at that counter, sole member, Colton A. Dahlberg. Registered agent, Ansel Dahlberg, Dahlberg Commercial, 218 West Superior Street. 411 days. He had owned it for 411 days before he did one single thing with it. And the thing he did was 11 days after I said no to his folder. I want to describe what that actually felt like because it was not rage, it was rereading. I stood at that counter and I went back through 4 years, the way you go back through a chair you've taken apart. And everything I had explained to myself with small town, bad luck, my own reputation, the foam supplier, the directory listing, the designer at the chamber thing. It all had a different tack in it. It had been mended before, badly, by somebody. And I could not prove one single piece of it. I still can't. I want to be exact about that. I have never proven that my brother called my foam supplier. I never will. But I knew who owned the building I was standing in when I found out. And I still did not know the worst part. That was 8 months away, and it was going to come from the other direction entirely. Here's what a 54% rent increase on a duplex in West Duluth actually does. It does not make Seag homeless. She's not stupid. She has a job. She'd find something. It makes her move. And the garage does not move. And my ledger, my hand workbench, the good scissors on the fishing line, and about $900 of tools that belong to me are attached to a building my brother owns. And my name is on absolutely nothing. And I have 60 days. I did the only 3 things I could do. 1. I called a lawyer. She was clear and unromantic. He could raise the rent to whatever he wanted at the end of a term. There was nothing there. It's ugly, she said. It's not illegal. 2. I offered to buy the duplex. Through a broker who was not my father. Colt declined without a counter. The broker said the seller's representative used the phrase, "not currently entertaining offers," which is a sentence a man chooses. 3. And this is the one. I had 11 people. 3 of them were on the Garfield lease, which was fine. The shop was never at risk, only the garage was. But I did not know that for 11 days. For 11 days, I genuinely thought I might be looking at the end of the whole thing because I did not know how far it went, and I did not know what else he owned. So I did a thing. I had a new contract coming in, a hotel, 44 pieces, the biggest job since Rennie Boyce, and I needed Dree for it. And Dree had been talking for a month about a job at a place in Superior that would pay her $3 an hour more. And I sat down with her, and I told her the hotel job was signed. It was not signed, it was verbal. It signed 9 days later, and it did sign, and it was fine. But on the day I told her, I did not know that. And I told a 24-year-old woman a thing I did not know was true, so that she would not take a better job in the 11 days while I found out whether I still had a business. She turned the Superior job down that week. She told me so, cheerfully. Nobody ever found out. She is still with me. It worked. Remember this. It is going to matter in about 9 minutes. I went to my parents' house, first time in 4 years. My father was at the table, same table. My mother stood. I put the printout of the deed down. And my father, and I have to be fair to him here, he did not lie. He has never once lied to me, that's not what he does. My father looked at it and said, "That's Colt's. I did the closing for him." "You didn't tell me." "Ren." He took his glasses off. "It's a rental duplex in West Duluth. He's got 9 properties. It's a rental duplex." And then he said the thing, "And I'm going to give it to you whole because it is the most honest anybody in my family has ever been with me, and it took him 34 years. You want me to say I did something to you? I didn't do anything to you. That's the part you can't stand. I called you about Rennie Boyce. 1 phone call. I said, don't insult the man. And you're a grown woman with a business license and you decided not to take a deposit on a $50,000 job. I have made that phone call about 400 times in this town. Everybody I said it to took the deposit anyway. Everyone. You didn't. And you have spent 4 years needing that to be my fault. Because if it's your fault, then you closed your own shop. And I'll tell you the rest of it. When you came in here with that box, you didn't ask me for 60 days. You came in here to see whether we'd give it to you. There's a difference, and everybody at that table felt it. He was right about the deposit, completely. I have never once said otherwise, in this or anywhere. And I did not have an answer for the last part either. I have thought about it, and I think he was partly right, and I cannot get to the bottom of how partly. And here's what happened next. My mother defended him. That's all. Nobody attacked him, he just won. And she could not stand for him to have won on the merits. So she added something. She said, "And your father did everything for you. He did the same for Colt, and he'd have done it for you if you'd let him. Every dime we put behind that boy." And my father said, "Bev." And she said, "Every dime, and he's never once thrown it in our faces the way you." And my father said, "Bev." And it was much too late, because there it was. Not in a folder, not in a document. Out of my mother's own mouth, defending a man who did not need defending. Every dime we put behind that boy. I said, "How much?" And nobody said anything. And I said it again, and my father put his glasses back on, which is what he does instead of answering. I found the rest of it later, and the number was $194,000 across 6 years. A guarantee on the first Dahlberg Marine building, a capital contribution, and 2 personal loans that were never papered. $11,000 sat on a kitchen counter for 4 years, waiting to be slid across a table at me. $194,000 had never once been mentioned in that house. And my mother told me herself, not to hurt me, to win an argument my father had already won. 8 days later, I was in the garage with Seag, doing the ledger, and I told her about the deed and about my mother. And Seag Voss got very still. And I have known her 10 years now, and I knew, in the middle of my own sentence, before she said one word. I said, "Seag," and she said, "I've known since March." 8 months. Here's what happened. In March, the property management company had sent her a routine notice, an owner change form, the kind they send when a building transfers, asking her to confirm her contact information. The new owner's name was on it. She called the number. Colt picked up. And my brother, and I believe this part entirely because it's exactly the size of him, my brother was pleasant. He said he was surprised too. That it came through a portfolio purchase. That nothing was going to change. And then he said, "And obviously nothing's going to change on the rent, Seag. You've been there 9 years." He did not threaten her, not one word. There is nothing to write down. He simply made sure she understood 2 things at the same time. That he owned it, and that he was being generous. And Seag Voss, 47 years old, divorced out of a family she'd been in for 19 years, working nights, 1 car, 9 years in that unit, did not tell me. For 8 months. I asked her why, and she did not do what I expected, which was cry or explain or say she was protecting me. She said, "Because I was scared. Not of him. Of moving. I'm 47 and I've got nothing, Ren. I have a Buick with a bag on the window, and a job I can do in my sleep, and a house I don't own where I know which stair is loud. And I told myself for 8 months that I was keeping it from you so you wouldn't burn your whole family down over a rental duplex. And that was a real reason. I want you to know that was a real reason, and I meant it about 4 days a week. The other 3 days I knew exactly what I was doing." And then she said the thing. "You want me to be the person who gave you a key." I was that. That happened. I was also a woman who kept her mouth shut for 8 months so nobody would raise her rent. Both of those are me, and I'm not going to pick one for you. And this is where the whole thing came apart in my hands. Because I opened my mouth to say something to her, and I don't know what it was going to be. I genuinely don't, and I have thought about it. And what came into my head instead was Dree. 4 months earlier, the hotel job is signed. A 24-year-old woman turned down $3 an hour more because I told her a thing I did not know was true in order to protect myself for 11 days. Same shape, not the same size. Seag's was 8 months and mine was 11 days, and I'll take that difference every day of the week. But it was the same shape. And I had done it 4 months before I found out she had. And I had not lost 1 minute of sleep over it. And I had told myself it was for the business, so I closed my mouth. And what I actually said out loud in that garage was, "Okay." And Seag said, "Okay?" And I said, "I have to go home." And I went home. That is not a noble ending to a scene. It's what happened. I did not forgive her, and I did not confront her. I found out I had no floor to stand on, and I left. Now I'll tell you how it came out, because you've been waiting since the first minute and I've made you wait on purpose. Seag moved, in February, to a 2-bedroom on Grand Avenue with no garage. I helped her. It took 2 trips and a rented trailer, and neither of us said very much. The tools came to Garfield. The ledger came to Garfield. The good scissors are still on fishing line, and now they're on a bench in a light industrial building with a loading door. The brass key is in a drawer. I did not frame it. I'm not going to. The business did not blow up. That's the answer. It didn't blow up, and it didn't explode into 50 locations either. 10 years from the box in the kitchen, here is what I actually have. 3 shops. Garfield, one in Superior, and one in Cloquet that is really a 2-person satellite. 11 employees, which is the same 11 as year 4, because 2 left and 3 came and 1 came back. About 1.4 million a year, and if you have never run a shop, let me tell you what 1.4 million in upholstery is. It is a good living for 11 families, and it is not a yacht. I do not have a private plane. I have a van with 206,000 miles on it. Dahlberg Marine went from 4 locations to 9 in 6 years, on short-term paper and personal guarantees. And in year 8, the boat market did what the boat market does. 6 of the 9 had never had a full profitable year. He was paying one lender with another's money and counting prepaid winter storage as revenue before the boats were in the building. He did not collapse because of me. I want to be completely clear. I did not do one thing to my brother. I never sued him. I never called a lender. I never gave an interview. He collapsed because he had built the thing on the assumption that somebody would always guarantee the next one. My father guaranteed the next one. Twice. Dahlberg Commercial lost its credit line in year 9 and its office in year 10. My father is 63, and he is working for another brokerage now as a licensed agent, on split commission, in the town where he has been the guy since 1994. My mother sold the place on Island Lake. The duplex on Restermel went to the bank with the rest of it, and was sold at auction in the spring of year 9. I did not buy it. 3 people have asked me why, and I don't have a good answer, except that it would have been a sentence with a period on it, and I have found that I don't much like those. Year 10, April. All 3 of them, no appointment, at the Garfield shop on a Tuesday afternoon, while Dree was spraying in the back and had to shut the gun off. There were no flowers. Colt put a proposal on my desk. 2 of his remaining leases, which he wanted me to assume. $380,000 toward the guaranteed debt. And a job, operations, he said, which was the closest my brother has ever come in his life to asking me for something. My mother said the words, temporary family emergency. I said no to all 3, and I gave a reason for each, and I did not raise my voice, and it took under 4 minutes because I had gotten very good at this. And then my mother said, "You're going to leave your brother with nowhere to go." And I looked at my father, and he was looking at the floor. And I said the 7 words. "Don't bring your problems into this house." Nobody moved. I let it sit for a while, longer than was kind. And I knew it while I was doing it, and I did it anyway, and I'm not going to pretend to you that I didn't enjoy about 4 seconds of it. Then I said one more thing. which was that our employee assistance office had a packet for people whose employers had missed final paychecks, and that any of his people could call it, and that I'd tell them who to ask for, because his people hadn't done anything. They left. My father was the last one out, and he stopped in the doorway with his back to me and said, "That was a good one." And I said, "I know." That's the closest my father and I have ever come to understanding each other. And it happened in a doorway. And neither of us turned around. There is no garage anymore, the building sold, and the new owner tore it down in year 9 and put a slab and a fence. So the last part of this happened at Seag's place, on Grand Avenue, in a kitchen, in year 10. 2 years after I said, "Okay," and went home. We had never talked about it. 2 years. She came to things. I fixed her chairs. It sat there. And I finally said it. I said, "I never told you why I said okay that night." And she said, "I figured you were done with me and being polite about it." And I told her about Dree. The whole thing. The hotel job that was not signed. The $3 an hour. The 11 days. And Seag listened the whole way through, and then she said, "Does she know?" And I said no. And Seag said, "Are you going to tell her?" And here's the end of it. I said, "I bought your building. Not the duplex, that's gone. The fourplex she'd moved into on Grand, which had gone on the market in February, which I'd known about because I make it my business to know things now." I said, "I bought it in March. Your name's on the deed, not mine. It's done, it's recorded, you can go look at it on First Street tomorrow, and there's no note on it and nothing for you to sign." She did not say thank you. I want to be accurate. Seag Voss has never once said thank you to me in 10 years, and I would find it deeply upsetting if she started. She sat there for a while. Then she said, "Why would you do that? After?" And I want to tell you I said something beautiful. What I said was, "Because I'd rather be somebody who does it than be right about you." And Seag said, "That's not the same as forgiving me." And I said, "No, it isn't." And she said, "Okay." And then we sat in her kitchen for about 40 minutes and did not talk about it anymore. And at some point she got up and put the kettle on without asking me. And that was the whole night. 2 things, and then a question. The first. Everybody wants the person who saved them to be clean. I did too. For 8 months, I had a woman in my head who taped a bag over a car window and worked nights and asked for nothing. And that woman was real. That all happened. I did not make it up. And she also sat on something for 8 months because she was 47 and scared of moving. You do not get the clean version. Nobody's benefactor is clean. And I think a lot of people throw away the only person who ever helped them over the 8 months and end up with nobody, because they'd rather have no one than have somebody complicated. I almost did it. What stopped me was not grace. What stopped me was Dree. I found out I was the same shape as the woman I was about to judge 4 months before I got the chance to judge her. And I have never once been so grateful to have already done something wrong. The second. My father was right about the deposit, and it does not touch anything else. I closed my own shop. I did. I was 31 and I didn't take a deposit on a $50,000 job because my dad said don't insult the man. That's mine. I own it. And then I asked for a room, and there were 40 boxes in it. Those are 2 different sentences. And my family has spent 10 years trying to make them one, and the entire work of my 30s was learning that you can be at fault for the thing and still not deserve what came after. Let me ask you honestly, and I want the real answer, not the kind one. Seag Voss gave me a garage when I had $200 and a box. And then she kept something from me for 8 months to protect herself. Does the 8 months cancel the garage? A lot of you will say no immediately. Sit with it a second. She let me stand in a county building and find out from a stranger, and the harder one, the one I still don't have. I told Dree a job was signed when it wasn't, so she wouldn't leave. It worked. She's still with me. She's been with me 8 years, and she has no idea. Do I tell her? I've had 2 years on that one, and I go back and forth about once a month. Tell me. I read every one. Everything in this video is fictional, written for storytelling and reflection. If it reminded you of somebody, I hope it reminded you gently. Somebody can be the reason you survived and still be a person who protected themselves at your expense, and you are allowed to hold both without throwing either one away. And if something in your life doesn't sit right, take it apart and look. Somebody has usually mended it before,